Medieval Europe, a world of knights, grand cathedrals, brutal battles and lavish feasts. We know the look of their armor, their gowns, even their hairstyles. But there's one clothing layer almost no one talks about, because it was never meant to be seen. Their underwear. What hid beneath the complex layers of a medieval outfit? What was under a knight's chainmail? And did women wear anything under their opulent dresses? The answers are more surprising than you'd think. But to understand what lay hidden beneath those heavy doublets, we must first shatter a stubborn myth, one that even some historians still believe today. The filthy Middle Ages myth. Many still imagine the Middle Ages as a bleak era where people rarely bathed and supposedly didn't even know what underwear was. That stereotype is so deeply ingrained it's become a staple of pop culture, but reality is far more interesting. In fact, undergarments were the very foundation of medieval hygiene and daily comfort. Linen and coarse hemp undershirts or smocks acted as a vital shield between the body and the expensive, hard-to-wash fabrics of their outer clothing. Men typically called this undershirt a shirt or smock, while for women it was the chemise. These simple garments carried the entire hygienic burden. Linen absorbed sweat, dried fast, and stayed clean. Best of all, it could be boiled, a rare luxury for the time. While the elite had linen, most common folk wore undergarments made of coarse hemp cloth, often known as homespun. It was rougher and less comfortable, but far cheaper and easier to find. These undershirts might have looked plain or even humble, yet they were the ones absorbing all the daily grime and odors, allowing a person to maintain some level of freshness, even during long periods when a proper bath was simply out of reach. Surprisingly, people changed these shirts much more often than you'd think. In wealthy households, they might be changed daily, while in more modest families it happened every few days. This is a far cry from the filthy Middle Ages we so often see in movies and myths. Sure, their hygiene standards were different, but saying they wore nothing at all ignores a massive amount of historical and archaeological evidence. While men wore linen shirts that look familiar to us today, the history of women's undergarments is a true mystery, one that only unraveled in the 21st century. The artifact that rewrote history. In 2012, news that seemed almost unbelievable made headlines around the world, forcing historians to fundamentally rethink everything we knew about medieval women's clothing. In 2008, inside Austria's Lengberg castle, archaeologists searching through ancient chests and ragged scraps of fabric made a stunning discovery. At first glance, they appeared to be nothing more than ordinary linen garments. However, a closer look revealed something far more complex. Items strikingly similar to a modern bra. These were far more than just the typical scraps of cloth found in the past. They had distinct cups, neat straps, and even decorative details, proving they were built for more than just utility. Everything about them pointed to a thoughtful, functional, and surprisingly aesthetic piece of clothing. But the most stunning part was their date, the 15th century. Before this, everyone thought such designs didn't appear for another 500 years. The discovery at Lengberg Castle shook our entire understanding of history to its very core. Scholars still debate just how common these garments actually were. Were they a luxury for the rich, a regional trend, or just a common item that rarely survived? We still don't know. Yet one thing is clear. Medieval women sought out comfort, support, and beauty far earlier than traditional fashion history had ever led us to believe. These artifacts are clear proof. These are more than just practical items. They prove that medieval women were far more inventive, body-conscious, and even bolder in their personal fashion choices than we have ever managed to give them credit for. If bra-like garments existed in the 15th century, what about the most intimate layer of all? Did medieval women actually wear underwear? What women actually wore underneath? Things were actually much simpler when it came to men's clothing. Most men wore what were known as braies. These were loose, baggy trousers made of linen or hemp, looking like a cross between modern boxer shorts and short breeches. They were tied at the waist with a cord, or even fastened to their outer clothing. These braies were comfortable, breathable, and practical, the perfect daily solution for both peasants and knights beneath their armor. But women's fashion was far more mysterious. According to the vast majority of both written and archaeological records, women typically didn't wear any separate undergarments at all. Long linen chemises, heavy outer gowns, and multiple layers of skirts provided all the essential protection and hygiene a woman could ever need. That linen chemise served as underwear, loungewear, and the first barrier between the body and the outside world, all in one garment. But as always with history, the truth is never that simple. In certain regions of Italy, particularly toward the late Middle Ages, we start finding mentions of women's drawers. They were narrow, barely covering the hips, and sometimes consisted of two separate leg pieces tied at the waist. Such garments were worn by noblewomen, performers, or those in specific trades where movement or personal safety demanded extra protection. Even with these finds, such garments remained rare. For the vast majority of European women, underwear simply meant the long chemise which served every purpose. And this was considered perfectly normal and enough. Yet even this pales next to the strangest, most mysterious object long associated with chastity. But the truth is far different. Chastity belts, the Victorian fake. Whenever the subject of medieval underwear comes up, a terrifying image almost instantly springs to mind: the iron chastity belt. A heavy metal trap with locks, spikes, and complex mechanisms. Designed, as the legend goes, by jealous crusaders to be worn by their wives. This image is so ingrained in culture that it's simply taken as an ancient truth. But dig deeper, and the picture shifts dramatically. The vast majority of so-called chastity belts on display in museums today are not actually medieval artifacts at all, but rather clever fakes from the 19th century. The Victorian era, defined by its strict morals and a morbid curiosity regarding sexuality, took a strange delight in inventing medieval horrors, crafting exhibits specifically designed to embody their own dark fantasies of sin and punishment. In reality, mass-produced chastity belts simply never existed during the Middle Ages. The few devices that actually existed had nothing at all to do with simple jealousy or religious moral policing. They were intended for specific medical needs or even prison purposes and looked entirely different, lacking the grotesque elements seen in modern cinema. Still, the myth was so vivid and cinematic that it survived for centuries, overshadowing actual facts that are less scandalous but far more fascinating. If the iron chastity belt is nothing more than a historical fantasy, what real piece of clothing could have actually saved a person's life in the Middle Ages? Linen, the medieval body armor. Medieval underwear was about far more than just modesty or social tradition. Sometimes it was the critical factor that preserved a person's health, or perhaps even their life. A knight's linen or hemp undertunic actually played a far more vital role than most people would ever realize. These tunics didn't just protect a knight's skin from the inevitable chafing, burns, and irritation caused by constant contact with heavy, hot metal, but they also prevented dirt and debris from getting under the armor. Without such a layer, even a short campaign could lead to severe inflammation or infection, as chainmail and plate armor could heat up in the sun, causing brutal chafing while restricting necessary airflow. Linen absorbed sweat, cushioned friction, and provided a basic level of ventilation. Furthermore, this remarkable fabric possessed natural inherent antiseptic properties. This material hindered the growth of bacteria, helping small cuts heal faster while reducing the overall risk of inflammation. That's why linen garments were prized by both warriors and everyday townsfolk. It served as the primary barrier between the body and the grime of daily life. And finally, which pieces of medieval underwear survived the centuries to end up in our closets today? Medieval origins of modern fashion. Many of our modern garments aren't new inventions at all, but a deep legacy that has been passed down to us through the centuries. We don't even notice just how deep these roots go. Today's boxer shorts are the direct descendants of the braies once worn by both knights and peasants. Our basic undershirts and tanks trace their roots back to the linen chemise and smock, simple yet truly vital parts of the medieval wardrobe. That simple linen shirt you consider a wardrobe basic actually evolved from the medieval undertunic, a garment that served as a critical layer for both physical protection and basic hygiene. And the remarkable finds at Lengberg Castle proved once and for all that the quest for comfort and support began long before the industrial age even started. The history of underwear is the history of people striving to improve life, protect the body, and preserve health, even when medicine and daily life were far from perfect. It is a quiet, nearly invisible thread winding through time, connecting our modern lives to those who lived many centuries ago. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden layers of history, please subscribe and give this video a like. There are plenty more incredible historical details just ahead.